What's the most terrified you've ever been in your life? When my child was born 5 weeks early and couldn't breathe on their own, terrified me to my core. Years later he's a healthy terrible toddler and always getting in trouble. I love it. When I was 10 I was on a ride called The Whip at a carnival and the belt popped loose and I fell out of the car. I was hanging on to the edge and the guy running the ride was not paying attention. Everyone was screaming and yelling but I was too scared to say anything. Finally the guy shut the ride down and I clanged around a bit and got some bumps and bruises but I was glad to be alive. My mom had to be held back from attacking the ride operator. My, at the time, 1-year-old had an anaphylactic reaction and swelled up so fast. I dialed 911. He couldn't open his eyes, he started wheezing. This was horrible to witness. We administered the EpiPen. And the ambulance showed up and we took his first ride to the hospital. Till this day he's almost 4. We don't know what caused that reaction. He did not eat anything new that day. Sad face. I thought I was going to lose my baby that day. Witnessing a dangerous patient at the psychiatric hospital. I work at attack a nurse and having to stop the attack. I worked as a security guard and I am still employed by the hospital but now work as head janitor. I was in the very deep back country of the Olympic National Park. I slipped on a log I was using to cross a very fast and cold river. I almost went in. I'm not really sure how I did not. I badly dislocated my finger. We still had 3 days of trekking to get back to the car. There's a very, very low chance that my trekking partner would have been able to rescue me and their chance of finding help would have been very unlikely as well. Wandering through a hay field and stumbled into a marijuana grow operation. Was 16, next thing we knew we were at loaded gunpoint in front of a bunch of very pissed off outlaw bikers. I didn't know whether I was about to poop my pants or the guy I was actually did, but the dude must have felt something because he lowered his rifle and said, "You boys better beat feet." Oh boy howdy, I ran faster than Forrest Gump. When I was a teenager I worked pizza delivery. There was a biker clubhouse in my town built like a concrete bunker. They ordered pizza pretty regularly. I went to deliver once and when I got there, up on the side of the building was a guy installing a big floodlight. There were big scorch marks where there had been a light before, but that light was smashed. I called up to the guy, "Whoa, what happened up there?" Behind me the door had opened and this massive biker was standing there. For a delivery boy, you ask a lot of questions. I'm just young and curious. Being young's okay. He handed me exact change and took the pizza. The night I woke up to a tornado roaring outside and the mobile home bouncing on its pillars. It was the only time I've panicked. Nothing bad happened. How the trailer survived without damage is unknown. It was years before I could stay inside when I heard any wind without having to go outside and check the sky, even on cloudless days. As a kid, I woke in the middle of a bad storm and looked out the window. I saw a glowing alien peeking back at me from behind a tree in the back of the yard. I ran to my parents' room to wake them up. I was almost hyperventilating. When they both said they'd go look I didn't want them to even leave me because I thought they'd die. My dad went to check it out and took a long time to come back which made me almost inconsolable. My mom was now scared of how scared I was. Eventually he came back laughing. I had horrible eyesight so what I really saw through the blurry, torrential rain was a human man. Glowing? Nope, he was a lineman in a yellow high-vis suit, working on the power pole and lines that were down from the storm. The way his partner was shining a bright light to see what they were doing, coupled with the way he was standing by a tree and working, made it look like something peeking out from hiding. I had also just watched Scooby-Doo Cyberchase. Just Google that and imagine a yellow version of that villain was what I thought was out there. Crashing upside down into flood waters and being swept under a bridge. Driver's side door not able to open. Wife's side door was our escape route. Scary time. Hard flowing water. She didn't know how to swim, but we made it out to call her parents to come and get us. The house beside the flood waters were very helpful in getting us help. I guess when I was 16 I was in the ocean at the Jersey Shore on a sandbar about ankle deep when the tide started to come in so I stepped down into waist deep water and as I was walking toward the shore I noticed several sharks. Not whites but possibly sand sharks, stuck in the waist-deep area between the sandbar and the shoreline. I think they were waiting for the tide to come in so they could swim out to deep sea beyond the sandbar. They were awfully close and getting closer and closer. I was terrified I would be bitten but I kept quiet and took a step then stopped. And proceeded like that until I was out of the water. I prayed with each step. At the time I did not know that sharks are attracted to sound and erratic movement. Had I panicked and bolted or started screaming I would have been eaten alive by these things. Fun fact, at the time this was all happening, the very cute lifeguard was entertaining some bikini-clad young ladies fawning over him. Swimming under the shrimp boat, cutting a rope off the prop and getting rammed and bumped by large things I couldn't see. My brother and I got stuck on a malfunctioning Carnival roller coaster ride. It started slowing and lunging and then just stopped on the track. We were stuck sideways and partially upside down. We were also in elementary school and super skinny and starting to slide through the fairly loose safety restraints keeping us in our seats. We were both screaming and searching for places to fall that we might survive. It was about a 30 to 40 foot fall, and there wasn't anything but more tracks or hard ground. All the blood was rushing to my head, and I remember wondering if my parents would bury my brother and I next to each other. He was younger than me and squeezing the crap out of my hand and crying. I will never forget the genuine look of fear on his face, and I'm sure I had the same expression. After what seemed like an eternity, they were able to somehow briefly start or unlock whatever was holding us in place and move the cars to a spot on the track so we were no longer hanging upside down and we were guided to an emergency exit. I heard someone in one of the seats behind us fainted, but I definitely didn't turn around to look. I've never moved faster in my life to get my feet on solid ground. This was in the early 90s at a state fair. Occasionally it comes up, but my brother and I have never really talked about it. We survived it and that was enough. A buddy and me were out on the St. Lawrence River in a 15-foot bow rider. He goes, "Why don't we go ride that bow wave of a 150-foot lake freighter?" "Okay," I said. Get swept off the bow into the river. Now, I'm swimming 6 feet away from the side of this giant ship. I just about pooped in my swim trunks. I was walking home from the post office and there was a group of about 5 men ahead of me. 2 were sitting on a bench and the other 3 were standing facing them. They were kinda split 3 and 2 on each side of the small sidewalk. They saw me coming and started shouting sexual comments at me. I had to pass through them. There was no way around them to get home. I was already nervous walking closer. I tried to ignore them and not make eye contact. As I passed, one of them yelled, "We all gone ride you, girl." I immediately started running. I didn't look back until I had run at least 3 or 4 streets away. I don't know if they tried to follow me or not. I just kept running until my chest was burning. I realized I had run so frantically I didn't know what street I was on anymore. I just called an Uber. The driver turned out to be a woman and I told her what happened. She told me she was going to get me out of there safe. My younger sister had the stomach bug and was absolutely horrified of throwing up. Long story short, I got home and she was on the couch screaming, "Mommy, help me, I can't breathe." I sat next to her and she was completely stiff, like she couldn't move her hands. So I'm panicking at this point. She's yelling at me to help her, saying she can't move or breathe. We called the ambulance. Apparently she had such a bad panic attack over throwing up that she couldn't get enough oxygen to her brain. The more you know, I guess. Truck broke down 10 miles from home at 10 p.m. in January. I had to walk in blowing snow at -12°C, and for the last half of the trip I was being paced by a cougar. I could hear it chuffing and yowling maybe 50 or 60 meters into the brush. The flashlight didn't do any good. It just lit up the flying snow. Staying with the vehicle wasn't an option because there were animals that needed care back at home. Very rural location before cell phones were common. There was only one other house between me and home and nobody was there. No electricity or telephones that far out. I was hit across the face by a Tinder date I didn't know, in a city I didn't know, on an empty street in the dead of night as he was walking me back to my car. My fight or flight instincts had never been so powerful. I was choking on a piece of bacon when I was around 7 or 8 years old. My father was trying to remove it, but his finger was too large and I ended up having to try and remove it. I was so close to passing out when I finally got it out. If anything touches the back of my throat in an unexpected way, I immediately gag and cough it up. Caught in landslide in Pakistan, crawled on my knees above a raging river in rain and slippery clay mud to escape. Heart still thumps when I think about it. When I was 7 years old, I got attacked and mauled by 2 Dobermans. I did not talk for 6 months. Riding downhill on an interstate highway when it started sleeting and the roads went flash frozen. Cars and trucks sliding around everywhere at 65 miles per hour. We managed to avoid one of the immediate crashes and pull over to the side of the road. But cars were still sliding around and we were still afraid of getting hit. We got out of passenger's side and managed to climb up a little ways on the small patch of grass, but cars and trucks still kept coming all around for like 2 minutes. Even after the cars stopped coming, there was still no easy way out of there and people were hurt. First responders had to triage and we were some of the last people removed from the scene and dropped off at a gas station. My 10-year-old daughter was out walking the dog and a freak storm blew in really fast. High winds started knocking tree-sized branches down and there were sheets of rain. My daughter didn't have a phone on her and we didn't know which route she took, so we had to split up to try and find her. We kept coming back home to see if she'd shown up. The neighbors went looking too. I would drive past massive branches laying in the street and have to check if there was a little girl under them. She came home about 10 minutes later, but it felt like an eternity. I've never felt so helpless and terrified. Everything was out of my control. She and the dog were thankfully completely fine, just shook up. My wife and I were moving with our 10-month-old daughter to Alaska, and somewhere within the last 100 miles of our drive a bad snowstorm came through while it was dark. We came up on this steep hill, and as we were descending, the trailer we were hauling started to fishtail. Luckily I was able to save it, but I have never been more terrified in my life. I still get paranoid driving in the snow with my daughter or wife to this day. My sister and my best friend and I were camping for the weekend. We were up second night just biking around the grounds and decided to walk a path in the woods. We were laughing and goofing around in the dark in the woods pretty deep. It was like 1 a.m. My friend was trying to take a picture of a spiderweb and I remember making fun of her because they are so hard to shoot. She pulled up the images to show us she captured the web and we stood around getting blinded by the photo because it was so dark. And then it turned into scrolling through pics from that day. I got a split-second instinct that someone was looking at you and looked up and there was a man standing in the woods watching us. I could see light reflecting off his glasses and that he had a ball cap on. I just sucked in air and said, "There's a man over there." My friend immediately shined the screen light at him and charged toward him. She's kind of a baddie and she started hollering at him, "What are you doing? Why you sneaking up on us?" There was no reason for him to be there deep in the woods. And he was literally standing and hiding off the path and watching silently. We had been there for a while trying to take a picture of a spiderweb and scrolling through the day's pics. We got within like 4 feet of him and he turned and ran off through the woods. We decided we couldn't go back to our campground because we didn't want to show him or end up sitting around being vulnerable. So we biked up to the ranger station, but no one was there that late. Then we just biked around the campground the rest of the night because there were only like 6 other campers in the whole place and we didn't have a car. When morning came we were so relieved to finally go tell the ranger, and the ranger said he was planning on kicking him out because we were the second complaint. By our description. We slept on the beach that day. We literally biked like 5 hours. When my husband went out with my son to walk to the park and 10 minutes later called me screaming and crying saying our son was hit by a car. My son was 18 months old and in a stroller and was hit by someone not looking. For the 30 seconds that I was screaming, hearing my husband screaming, and me quickly getting shoes on, I had no idea if my son was dead or alive. Most viscerally terrified I have ever been in my life. Fortunately my son is okay, but it is very triggering to recall that frantic moment. Waking up in the middle of the night by tornado sirens and running to a dark basement as debris hit the side of our house during a tornado outbreak. Seeing the downed tree next to the house was pretty terrifying as well. It just barely missed the house and would have probably destroyed it. The night my mom went missing. No one believed me that something was wrong since she lived far away from all of us. But she would always respond within a few minutes if you texted her. Always. And I couldn't get in touch with her for hours. I spent 12 hours terrified that something horrible had happened to my mom. I turned out to be right, she was found dead the next morning. 4 weeks after that I'd have a panic attack if anyone took more than 30 seconds to respond to a text message. When I came back from vacation in Jamaica, I was extremely sick. It was so bad that I was hyperventilating in my sleep and boyfriend kept checking my breathing to make sure I was alive. My fever was so high it felt like hell. And I was convinced I would die in my sleep that one night. I rode the Iron Gwazi huge roller coaster in Busch Gardens at night. There's a database that can tell if your seat clicked in before you leave. Mine was not clicked in. I was ready to just get off the ride. Instead they made sure it clicked. Okay, that's fine. But the error I made is the normal seatbelt underneath the main part was not done up because I thought I was just getting off. There's a seatbelt and a seat clicking thing. So I spent 2 minutes of my life feeling my body fly out of the seat constantly, and feeling completely not secured, and I truly thought I was going to fly out. Truly. The ride ended and I immediately started sobbing. The first words I said was, "I thought I was going to die. My roller coaster days are over, I guess." It was horrible, Final Destination like crap. I was waiting for an elevator and a young guy came to wait for it too. The elevator was taking forever and all of a sudden my gut was telling me not to take it. I headed for the stairs and just started running. All of a sudden I hear someone running down the steps and out of the corner of my eye, I saw the guy that was waiting for the elevator with me. I kept running until I exited the building and got to a busy area. Maybe it was nothing, but I didn't want to find out the hard way. When delivering my daughter, the doctor had to cut her umbilical cord while she was well inside me because it was wrapped around her neck. Then he told me I'd really better hurry. It still took me over 4 minutes to get her out after he broke her collarbones. She was black from the lack of oxygen, and they ran out of the delivery room with her. When I got a call from my ML telling me my son had been hurt and proceeded to break down in tears only to have a nurse come on the line asking if the hospital had permission to treat my son. When I asked what was wrong with him, she said they couldn't tell me that because they didn't know how badly he was hurt. When my 10-year-old daughter impaled herself on a stick. We were camped almost an hour from the nearest hospital. That trip into town took 10 years each off of my husband's and my lifespan. A small tornado went through behind my house during a summer thunderstorm. Completely ripped up huge trees. You could see the path it made through behind our house. From my kitchen, I watched a huge tree fall onto our main power line. Didn't fall on our house, but it was scary to watch with the electricity sparking off the down line. Scared the poop out of me. I still am, fearful of storms because of it. Luckily, no one was at the receiving end of this. One of my scariest memories working in a psych hospital is seeing a big tall guy lift up 50-pound chairs and throwing them like the chairs didn't weigh anything across the nursing station. Those chairs could have really messed someone up if it had hit someone. After he had calmed down and had gotten meds, his reasoning for doing so was because the voices had told him to do that. It's okay, you can get into my car. When I was 4, a man tried to get me to get into his car. Had my older sister, 13, not been with me, I'd have gotten in. No telling what would have happened, but I doubt it would have been good. Almost drowning. Scary moments being under the waves and just seeing your life slip away. I was able to consciously see and know that I was probably going to die. I made it out, but the surge of adrenaline from the experience made me instantly fall asleep for 14 hours. So, I was staying over at friend's house with another friend of mine, and we were all hanging out in the computer bedroom looking at early 2000s memes or whatever was cool, and her parents were out for the night. This bedroom was in a hallway off of the living room where the front door was. It was the first bedroom in the hallway, then it was the bathroom, then my friend's room at the very end. At some point I walked out of the room, through the living room and to the kitchen. As I was walking to the kitchen, I heard a door shut. When I turned to look, the bathroom door was closed and the light was on. So after getting water or whatever, I went back and asked if they went to the bathroom. Nope. So of course we were all scared crapless and went to investigate. Now the bathroom door was open, but the light was still on and her bedroom door was shut. Okay, freaking scary. Us, being dumb teenagers, decided to grab a knife for protection and go in there. We were all standing at the door, her huge dog is with us and growling at the door. My friend starts to reach for the door when the handle starts to wiggle. So, of course we start screaming and run out. We went across the street to the neighbors and called the cops and her mom. Cops clear the house out, say it's all clear. Once we get back in, we see that her window was open and all of the stuff on the nightstand had been knocked over. I really hate to think what would have happened if I hadn't left that room and noticed something was wrong. Grandma thought she'd cook brunch. We didn't have a gas line, rather we traded empty gas cylinders for new ones. A rubber hose connected the cylinder to the stove. She had something cooking on all 4 burners. After a while, she realizes only one of the burners is on fire. She checks, but because she's got poor eyesight, she doesn't spot the problem. She asks me to check. So I check and my blood turns to ice. My dear blind grandma had somehow contrived to lay the rubber gas hose across the closest stove. It wasn't the stove that was lit, the rubber was on fire. By some miracle the rubber had melted and fused shut the flow of gas, but it was burning down and it wasn't a very long pipe. I yelled something in some language I'd never heard and dumped a glass of water on the pipe. It sputtered and kept right on burning. I dumped a large bowl of water on it and that fucking thing just kept right on burning. My granny had already been screaming for about 30 seconds. My dad came rushing out of his room and into the kitchen. I must have successfully told him what was wrong. He told me to get the heck out and take my kid's bro with me. I went off running, grabbing my bro's hair on the way. When I was out of the house and nothing had gone all Michael Bay, I yelled and Dad yelled back saying it was okay to come back inside. He'd basically taken a bucket of water from the bathroom and drowned my granny's brunch. She was so guilty after that she wouldn't cook anything for a month. I was about 12 when this happened. A friend and I broke into what I remember to be an outdoor salt factory. It had just rained and there was a gigantic pile of sand in the middle of one of the silos. Being the intelligent children we were, began to dig into the side to make a fun cave. My friend was working on a different spot when the entire mound collapsed on me. I was trapped underneath a few 100 pounds of sand with my feet sticking out. I wasn't super deep and I didn't know how long I was underneath that sand, but I remember the darkness and my inability to breathe. I couldn't move and I was scared. Thankfully, my friend ripped through that sand as fast as he could. Between his digging and my frantic scrambling, I was able to escape. I still have nightmares about it sometimes.